Oi, there is no such thing as ego death. Ego death and the voids and blah 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 blah. If somebody says they've experienced ego death, he or she who says that they've experienced ego death is the ego. So I've had opportunities and times where I thought I've experienced ego death. And ego death everywhere, ego death. The ego goes around telling people that he had a death. It's an illusion of itself, you see. The ego runs around telling people, oh, I had an ego death. I had an ego death. I was in the void. How do you know you were in the void? How did you know you have an ego death? The only way you know is because your ego is there. That's the joke, bro. Ego death, ego death. Next time somebody tells you they had an ego death, just laugh or walk away from that person or kick him out of your vicinity. Do not stand for that foolishness. Ego death, ego death. Most people nowadays that experience ego death, they speak very beautifully about it because the ego is involved, bro. You might say my ego is involved in trying to shut it down, and there's this back and forth loop. Ego death, simply, if one exists, it's the moment you give up completely. There is nothing to discuss. You won't even fight me. That's the point of this. We won't have an argument because you had true ego death. And I'm not trying to argue with somebody who said they had an ego death. I'm just saying you can't fool me. And you can fool yourself, but you can't fool me. You can tell yourself you had an ego death. You can say, oh, I see. Here's the thing. The seer is the illusion. The ego death is the illusion. You saying you had an ego death, that's the joke, bro. It means your ego is still perpetrating this idea that it is dead. It wants to believe it is dead. Because it makes it easy for you to then go around fooling yourself now and other people. Because your ego is dead, you see? It's missing. It's out of the picture. It's gone. Any fool that believes you, you can brainwash them till the end of time. Ego death, my ass. Ego death, ego death. There's no such thing as ego death. The only level after life, after birth, is death. That's your only ego death, is actual death, clinical death where there are no pulse, there's no breathing. That's the only ego death that exists. This ego death where you think you have to die before. If you had to die before you die, we will not be having this conversation, bro. Me and you will just understand each other, and there's nothing to speak of. There's nothing to argue about. There's no, oh, that one time I tried psychedelics and I had experienced ego death. That experience you had, yeah, we all have it, bro. Every single person born and yet to be born will experience your little petty psychedelic experiences, bro. Doesn't matter if it's on ayahuasca or DMT or whatever it is. There is no ego death. It's just something fashionable for the white girls to run around and tell people that they don't have an ego anymore. And the fool, that's you, whoever the foolish one is, believes it. That's not me. I refuse. So get away from me with your ego death. I don't want to hear none of that shit. Ego death, ego death, ego death. Jesus Christ. People are funny nowadays. What else are they going to come up with terminologies to confuse and manipulate? And all of this is a game. I'm playing a game here, ego death. If you say ego death around me, I will just smack you. You have the right to smack me back, but I got hands. I'm going to beat the ego death out of you. This nigga.